The official journal for the Seventh-day Adventist Church says that we Adventists should not be practicing any tolerance at all, a zero tolerance policy. Now, what in the world could they be talking about? Recently, I published this video here about the propaganda published in the Adventist Review defending abortion. Then I published another video here just a few days ago where the same author demonstrates her hypocrisy by openly admitting that yes, government should be supported in removing freedoms because we should not be free to hurt other people. Bettina Krause for the GC Religious Liberty Department said that it is the government's role to enact restrictions in order to protect public health, and that we should support the government's right to restrict freedoms when those freedoms might be used to hurt others, but then demonstrating a level of hypocrisy that only Adventists are capable of achieving. She turns around and smears other Christian denominations who support the government's God-given right to protect children from acts of violence. But that's not all. Speaking of this COVID, quote, pandemic, she says that we can combat rumors, conspiracy theories, oh my, and the use of stigmatizing speech that links the current pandemic with a particular ethnic or racial group. Now watch this. While the origin of the virus has been linked to a geographical location, China, it came from China, this does not mean that those from any particular racial or ethnic group are at greater risk of infection. Using racial or ethnic labels in a derogatory way, blaming any group, China, for the virus, or treating people of Asian descent differently. So there's a lot here to comment on, but notice this right here. This is simply wrong and should never be tolerated. So this woman did not just write this article up and publish it. There are other people and church leaders and editors that review these articles and approve them before they are published. So several important observations. Number one, leaders have no problem coming out and publicly telling you that you should never, ever tolerate stigmatizing speech because such actions are incompatible with a biblical worldview, which understands that every human being is a unique and much loved child of the Creator. So any language, any stigmatizing speech that in any way disparages or dehumanizes others is simply wrong and should not be tolerated. Yet on abortion, when it comes to the little boys and girls still in their mother's womb, they tell us the exact opposite. According to them, we are not supposed to accept or tolerate speech that blames others for this, quote, pandemic. But as Adventists, we have been told repeatedly for the last 50 years that we are supposed to tolerate and accept it when people within our own church leadership support, excuse, or defend the dehumanizing speech that justifies the murder of unborn children. You notice that? This is complete hypocrisy. With COVID, we are not supposed to tolerate stigmatizing speech, but abortion within our own church, we are supposed to create a safe climate for ongoing discussion. So two groups of people, Asians and the unborn. One group, you should not tolerate hurtful or stigmatizing speech, but the other group, we are supposed to tolerate speech advocating violence and their murder. Do you see the blatant hypocrisy? It's also take notice that during this, quote, COVID pandemic, leaders in our church have great moral certainty. It is simply wrong. But when it comes to killing little children, oh, you know, opinions differ. We can't be judgmental. We can't really say what's going on. And, you know, we can't be their conscience, blah, blah, blah. So here it is again, in your face, blatant hypocrisy. And did you notice the heading of the next section, vulnerable communities? There are people uniquely vulnerable to COVID-19 who are utterly dependent on public officials to take immediate measures to ensure their safety. And of course, here comes the moral imperative. When they are talking like this, always look for the words must or have to or should. Church leaders just love to tell everyone what to do. We can and should speak on their behalf. They have very few ways to make their own voices heard, but we can advocate for them with our public leaders and elected officials. So again and again and again and again, out of their own mouth, these are their own words, the leaders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church have again demonstrated their public hypocrisy. They will lecture everyone that we must speak up for people who are vulnerable to some sickness. But when 40 million children, when 40 to 50 million little boys and girls are violently murdered and dismembered every year, not only will they say absolutely nothing, but they will condemn those who do.